Do you ever buy anything for upcycling and think, I'll get to that one day, and that one day never really comes? Well, today is that one day for me, and I'm very excited to get started. So my project today is this bird cage, which I've delayed doing anything with. It has a little bit of damage on it, which just makes it a little bit harder to get started. But along came Orchid Design's new pumpkin mould for autumn and fall, and the plan came to my head. I am going to turn this bird cage into my chocolate holder for Halloween and do a cute little pumpkin sign. Well, maybe not cute, maybe a bit scary. We'll see how it turns out, but it's going to be a pumpkin sign for Halloween. So let's see how it goes.
First things first, we've got this pumpkin mould, and in it comes with a big pumpkin and a small pumpkin, and then various loose leaves that you can add around it as well. This is only the second time I've used a mould. The first time was on the gingerbread character mould, which is another of the new releases for Christmas for 2023. For those of you who are familiar with moulds and exactly what to do, you probably can already see what I should not have done, and that is forget the cornstarch or corn flour to line the mould before starting. I did do that with the gingerbread characters and it worked really well. So at this point, once I'd realised that I'd forgotten to add the corn flour to help with the mould releasing easily, I just thought, well, we'll see how it goes, and worst comes to worst, I'll just try again. This is Orchid Design's own air dry clay, and it's really soft. Some clays can be a little bit hard. I was really happy that this was nice and comfortable to use. So once you've filled in your shape that you're using completely with the clay, or you can also use something like hot glue or resin, then you want to make sure that your mould is also filled up to the top so it gives you a flat surface. This is so it is easy to attach whatever you're going to attach it to. I used a rolling pin to smooth it out, and there's also a raised ridge around this mould, which gives you a nice smooth edge once it's released. Again, these might be things that Orchid Design's aficionados know all about, however it was new to me, and for a beginner, a really easy entry into playing with moulds. Despite knowing that I had made a mistake by forgetting to add the cornstarch at the start, fortunately the pumpkins did release pretty well from the moulds. I chose to do both sizes of pumpkins, even though I only intended to use one of them, and the smaller one was going to be my guinea pig tester for which pumpkin colours I was going to use on the main piece. And in fact, the stalks of the leaves didn't come out of the mould particularly well, which wasn't a problem for my design, but it probably would have been more successful had I applied that cornstarch at the start. Often air dry clay will crack over time, however I haven't experienced any cracking with the pumpkins. If it does crack, you can just add in some extra clay once it is dry to fill in those spaces, or leave it as is depending on the look that you're going for. I didn't have a perfect orange pumpkin colour, so I had to mix that up. I went with the only orange that I had, which was called Marigold, and a bright yellow called Daffodil. Mixed them together and they were pretty close to a good pumpkin colour. I also added a dash of a red called Bougainvillea, which added a bit more vibrancy to the orange as well. This mix of paint covered really nicely, and in fact I only needed one coat, which was perfect. And then I eventually decided to go back and paint over the leaves as well, so that there would be no gap between where the green of the leaves ended and the orange started. I always find it hard to visualise exactly how a colour will look, especially in relation to another colour that it is near. So I did 3 green options on my small test pumpkin to see which ones worked the best, and it was kudzu that I went with for the final option. I thought if this pumpkin was going to be on a sign in the dark on Halloween, then a bright green would actually be the most effective for standing out. Normally painting the precise little details such as these curly bits on the pumpkin leaves would make me a bit nervous that I wasn't going to do it very well, but actually because I'd done orange under the entire base of the pumpkin, there wasn't quite so much pressure to get it perfectly right, and it was quite fun painting in all those swirly details. I used the same green for painting in those standalone leaves. I knew I wasn't going to use them on the sign, but I had an idea for how I might use them mixed in with my bird cage. So stick around to see where these random bit of leaves ended up. Adds a nice bit of detail. I went with the classic of trick or treat for my sign, with the word treat being painted onto the pumpkin. So I started with E being the middle letter to make sure that it was fairly evenly spaced from the middle. I chose not to use a question mark for trick or treat. It seems like it's about 50-50 whether you do or you don't. And because of the curly bit of leaf underneath where the question mark would go, I thought it actually might look a little bit confusing, so went with no question mark. I used some scrap wood for the back of my sign and for the signpost, and did a test of both white and black paint to see what the pumpkin looked most impactful against, and chose black for the sign in the end. You only need wood glue to attach this clay to something like a wood sign, so I used Gorilla wood glue, which is essentially my go-to glue for most projects. I used a lollipop stick to spread it out all over the back of the clay, but not too thick near the edges so it wouldn't squish out of the sides. For the colours of the pumpkin, the orange, the yellow and the red, they are all a clay-based paint, which means that they need sealing, otherwise they don't have any resistance to water. I wanted to finish with a look of black wax to add some dimension and a bit of darker moodiness to the pumpkin. But to do black wax, it's best to do a coat of clear wax first. Then if you put too much black wax on, you can more easily remove it. But if you don't do that layer of clear wax, it can be really hard to remove enough black wax if you go overboard with it. Fortunately, I didn't need to do too much to my bird cage to get it right for my Halloween decor. However, it was pretty dusty, so the first thing I had to do was get my vacuum and clean off those layers of dust. In keeping with the dramatic Halloweeny look, I painted the bird cage black. I needed 3 coats of black spray paint. Just as when painting with a brush, it's really important to do light coats, otherwise it's going to be too thick and not adhere nicely. And as much as I love painting and brushes, there was no way I was going to be painting this birdcage by hand. There are far too many little spindles in that. I filled it with my chocolate and an LED lit jack-o'-lantern, and it feels like the perfect amount of spooky Halloween decor. And if you'd like to see what I do with their Christmas gingerbread mould as well, then there is also the video for that available here. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, take care. Bye.